Hey everyone, welcome to the very first Data Mesh Days hosted by the Data Mesh Learning Community. My name is Melissa Logan and I will be your host today. I'm director of the Data Mesh Learning Community and I'm excited to be with you. We have a great program with talks from end users and practitioners focused on the life sciences space. Data mesh is a multi-year transformation, as many of you know, and a few of our presenters have been on this journey for a couple of years. They are some of the earliest adopters of data mesh. They've shared several updates with the data mesh learning community over the years, and we're excited to get another progress report from them and welcome some new presenters here today. If you're here, you know that data mesh is a concept that was created by Zhamak Dehghani as a new approach to data management that puts more ownership in the hands of those who know the data best. This is achieved through decentralized data ownership and architecture, and it helps large and complex organizations derive more value from their data. As you'll hear today, there are huge benefits for organizations in the life sciences space to moving to a data mesh implementation and approach. Things like increasing innovation, accelerating evidence generation, and other benefits you'll hear about today. Before we dive into the event, I want to just share a few different house rules. If you are attending this event today, that means you will abide by our code of conduct and expected behaviors. We want to create a welcoming and inclusive community at Data Mesh Learning. You can find these documents on datameshlearning.com. If you notice any issues, please let us know right away at conduct@constantia.io. We also have Diogenes Topper on the call today who will be moderating throughout the event. If you notice any technical issues, audio, video, something not working properly, please flag those for us in the live stream chat, which is available on the page itself that you're watching this video on. We have a fantastic agenda for you today. We've got 5 different talks, and we'll host a breakout session at the end. We'll have a short intermission partway through the event as well. Not all presenters could be with us live here today, but all of them have said they would be happy to answer your questions. Some of them will, in fact, be here with us live and can do a Q&A at the end of their talk. And they're happy to answer questions in the chat. So please do ask questions throughout the event. We'll get to them either today or at a later time. At the end of the event, we'll be hosting a breakout session so you can meet other attendees. One of the key features of the Data Mesh Learning community is one-to-one interaction with other people in the community. We ran a community survey, and this was one of the #1 reasons people join the community. So we want to create space for you all to do that. During the breakout session, you can meet other attendees. Think of it kind of like a hallway track. Introduce yourselves, share where you are on your data mesh journey, discuss the most interesting talk you heard today, and just get to know other people within this really fantastic community. I want to say thank you to our Life Sciences Program Committee. They helped us form the event and build the schedule that you'll have here today. Thank you to Jeremy Foreman and Samia Rahman of CGen and Scott Herleman of Data Mesh Radio. Before we dive into the content today, I wanted to share a few details for you about the Data Mesh Learning community. For those of you who might not already be familiar, Data Mesh Learning is the global home for Data Mesh. It's a place for data leaders and practitioners to connect with their peers, to discuss organizational changes and engineering best practices and research-related technologies. Our community has 7,700 people on Slack. We have 6,600 people who subscribe to our newsletter, and there are 4,500 people on the meetup group that meets regularly, the place where you registered for this event. The Data Mesh Learning community has a number of current programs that you can access right now. There's a resource library on the website. There's hundreds of videos, blogs, articles, including case studies, use cases, interviews, and other resources. We also host biweekly meetups on a wide range of topics, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we also have a Slack chat where people ask questions, community members share stories, practical advice, and discuss other questions that they have about data mesh. I mentioned that we host a number of different virtual meetups, so I wanted to share with you some that we have facilitated recently. We ran a Data Mesh Lunch and Learn at a Data Council event in Austin, Texas in March. We recently hosted a short small group roundtable about data governance in Data Mesh. This was a limited group of, I think it was 28 people, just to have more of that one-to-one conversation. The majority of the virtual meetups have maybe 100, 150 people in them. So this was a nice way to just have a more in-depth conversation with a few members of the community. And we always have a wait list for these shorter roundtable events. I mentioned that there are several people in our community that have been doing data mesh, implementing data mesh for a number of years, and PayPal is one of them. They talked about implementing data mesh at PayPal recently and shared a lot of the wisdom that they've learned over the years, challenges to avoid, benefits that they see, all of that. There was also a talk about a practical data mesh roadmap, how to accelerate your journey toward implementing data mesh, and a data mesh operating model talk, where we talked about data mesh roles and responsibilities, incentives for data product growth, and team collaboration. These videos are all available on the YouTube, except for the small group session, but otherwise all of our videos are available on YouTube. We have a couple of upcoming meetups we wanted to let you know about. The next one is May 17th, and it's about roles and responsibilities in data mesh. The next one is about becoming a data mesh engineer on May 25th, again with the PayPal team. This is a great time to ask them questions about their experiences, so please join that one if you can. We also have some new programs that we're working on right now in the data mesh learning community. The first one we've actually launched, some of these we've launched already, and we're in process of. So the end user roundtables are a new small group session that we started where end users only, no vendors or consultants can join, and you can meet others and share your progress, ask each other questions, and go along this data mesh journey with other people in the community. We just started it in April, and we had about 20 people join. We split it into 2 time zones, one for North America time zone, one for Europe time zone, and people had a great experience with that. We will be repeating that and hosting those on a monthly basis. So if you're interested in joining, we invite you to go to the datameshlearning.com website or join our Slack, and you'll see details about how to join there. We also are starting a new program to help foster local meetups around the world. So there are a lot of data meetups everywhere already. Some people want to start data mesh specific meetups. We're happy to support both of those efforts. So on our blog today, you'll notice that we are launching a local meetup program where you can sign up for a speaker bureau if you have a fantastic data mesh talk you want to give at a local event. We'll help you find one. Or if you want to start or organize or co-organize a local event about data mesh, you can find out how to do it on our website as well. We also participate in a number of co-located events. We're planning to do some additional events throughout the year. I mentioned Data Council in Austin, Texas. Recently we went to where we hosted a lunch and learn, and we'll be doing more of these as we go, including a co-located event or a meetup at Big Data London. We hope to see you at these events in the future. And then the most recent program, which is this one, Data Mesh Days, we are launching today. This is our very first Data Mesh Days event. We want these to be half-day virtual events focused on a specific vertical. Our next event will be in the second half of the year and will be focused on financial services. If there's an event you're interested in hearing about or a vertical you're interested in hearing about, we'd love to know. We also have a few different resources that are works in process that we wanted to share with you. The first one is a Getting Started with Data Mesh white paper. We talked to a lot of different members of the community who are just starting their data mesh implementation or really curious about how to get started, and have talked to people who have been on the journey and how did they dip their toe in. And there isn't a single way to start your data mesh journey. There are multiple ways, but there are some common ones that we hear. So we wanted to capture those in a white paper with members of our community. We are in fact doing our kickoff call for that next Wednesday, and we're excited to produce something for you a little bit later this year. We'll also be producing the very first data mesh survey and report. We know there are a handful of these out here. This is one that we'll work on with an independent research firm to understand the adoption and usage trends for data mesh, as well as what does the future of data mesh look like? Where are we going? What do we need? What are the skills gaps? All of those types of questions. Another project that we have coming in second half is the data mesh ecosystem landscape. When we talked to a lot of different folks, again, we heard very commonly, well, we'd love to know which vendors we could work with, whether it's consulting on change management or technology vendors as you get to the technology architecture part of your journey. And we will be putting together a list of those different folks that you can work with on your journey, and that will be on the Data Mesh Learning website. And then finally, the Data Mesh Learning website will be getting a refresh later this year. So I mentioned we have a number of different resources on the website, on the YouTube. We'll be creating a library of those that's filterable, so you can find things based on topic or level or different things like that, maybe vertical industry and so on and so forth. So we just want to make it easier for you to find the resources you need as you go through your data mesh implementation journey. The Data Mesh Learning community is made possible by community sponsors, and we want to say thank you for their support. They are, in fact, enabling us to do these new programs, to invest in new programs and bring you new resources throughout the year. And we're super excited to be able to do that. And we want to hear from you as well, what resources would be useful for you. That's why we're here. We want to provide what folks need as they go through their data mesh implementation journey. So thank you to our community sponsors. We have platinum sponsors, Agilab, Reltio, NextData, and Starburst. Gold sponsor Stream. Our silver sponsors are Acral Data, Hasura, and Soda. And bronze sponsors Atlan, Calibra, Data.World, Monte Carlo, Snowflake, and ThoughtWorks. Thank you all so much. We appreciate your support and are very happy to be able to provide all the resources that people need. So that's my shameless plug for Data Mesh Learning community. We do hope you join if you're not already a member of that community. Just go on there, meet peers, ask questions. That's why it exists. And please do let us know if there are things that we can do to help you as you go through your journey. So I'm very excited to have our first guest speaker on. This is someone I mentioned who has been on their data mesh journey for a number of years. It's Omar Khawaja from Roche Diagnostics. He'll be talking about being a couple years into their journey, what progress have they seen, and what's next for them. Their data mesh journey began in early 2021, and today they have 5 global functions delivering high-quality data products that have drastically accelerated the speed and scale of data-driven intelligence. In some cases, it's been from 5 years to 3 months, which is just unbelievable. So as I talked about the benefits you can get from moving to a data mesh methodology, this is some of the benefits that you can experience. So excited to have Omar here, and we'll turn it over to him to let him speak.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining, which I believe is the first Data Mesh Day for life sciences. I think it was just a few months ago in Big Data London conference, where in the panel discussion with the great minds like Cindy and Jean-Marc and Jules, it was discussed that how data mesh will grow and many companies and industries will be implementing it. And today, I believe you will witness 14 plus different life sciences companies have publicly shared that they are implementing data mesh approach to create business value for their organizations. It is great to see that variety. It is great to see not a cookie cutter approach and so much opportunity for all of us to learn from. We started our journey almost 2 years ago. I cannot believe that I'm saying that it has been 2 years. And today, in a very short span of time, I will try my best to share some of our learnings in the past 2 years, what has worked, what has not worked with you all as much as I can. I think the best way to describe in one sentence what has happened is what's written on the slide. the more I learn, the more I come to know that I know very little. And I'm grateful to this amazing data mesh learning community who has allowed us to share what we have learned and also taught us so many things to us throughout this 2 years journey, whether it is social or the technical side of this implementation. So without any ado, let's start with what you will hear today. I will very briefly touch upon how we started. It will be, it's going to be a very short summary of that. But most importantly, it will be kind of a retrospective on each of those 4 principles of data mesh to deep dive into what we have done and what we have learned. Before we do that, most important, why are we here? I would like to remind us the amazing aspiration that we have, doing now what patient needs next. So this implementation journey, as well as what you will hear on the slides, is not about technology, it's not about data products, it's not about platforms, but it's about doing now what patient needs next. It's about creating that business value. It's about creating the impact for patients and our customers. With that in mind, a quick recap on where we started. So like I said, our first seminar was back in 2021. We onboarded our first domain almost 2 years ago. We learned the ropes, we learned new techniques, and now with a whole 2-year journey, we have seen massive growth in terms of domains, in terms of data products, and that's what you will see today. My presentation is going to be around these 4 principles. And if you recall, I lovingly call them the mind, body, heart, and soul in terms of having domain-oriented ownership, data as a product concept, self-service data infrastructure, and last but definitely not the least, federated computational governance. Many people have asked, is it important to do all of these 4 things together, or shall we do one thing first and then the other, and so on? My reply to all of them and our learning so far has been that we need to make an effort on all of these, but a little effort on each of these principles. If we only focus on one of them, it will not be different from all other traditional approaches of only applying technology upgrades or only doing the social changes and only doing governance approaches towards data. And that was one of the key things and success behind this data mesh approach, that it has this balance between the classic triangle of people, process, technology, and data in the middle of it. So let's look at each of these principles and what has happened in the past 2 years. We have grown in terms of domains across the organization, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Although it's important to notice that even before we started with this data mesh journey, our data governance bodies and our divisions like pharma, diagnostics, and even group functions have already created the concept of domains. And that was one of the trigger of going all in on the data mesh approach, that we need to build upon that investment. While there were very little advancement on creating data products, and we started very humbly with some of our data domains, throughout this journey, we even further crystallized few things and cemented things like agreeing on data domain definition, as you see on the slide over here. We have also learned the approaches on applying product thinking, like product discovery approaches, opportunity value trees, a version of it in terms of lean value tree approach, where we have also written some blogs together with our partners on it. And we have also learned this double diamond design principle approach to explore whether data mesh works for this domain, identifying the use cases, drilling down on those use cases to identify the first set of data products, and then get into the rhythm of doing those data products and delivering the value right away. In the beginning, we didn't have those tools with us. And it's a funny story that even if you put together a team together, you won't be able to deliver value if they don't know where they are going. So putting a structure behind this has given us a step-by-step process, even to the extent that our information architecture and data governance team, shout out to them, They have done this amazing job in even coming up with this data maturity concept on which domains can assess themselves where they are on this journey on different social and technical aspects of information and data. And they can identify some of the action items which leads towards some tangible actions in creating data products and also applying some process and technology based approaches towards maturity. It's also important to identify that we may discover that data mesh is not right for everybody and there is no need to create that momentum. So for any organization out there who wants to start their journey, I would highly encourage you to ask that question first. Is it for me or not? Am I ready for this real paradigm shift in approach towards data management and generating value from data? It's in our journey, when we started with one of our domains where we did not have a domain leaders identified. But since then, we have come a long way. And you will see very soon in some of the slides that I will share, we have so many domain leaders identified, as well as many data domains onboarded with their data product teams, as each of them are now creating value through their data products team. One mantra that I would like to share with you all, and high suggestion, is that don't wait for these perfect definitions. Don't wait for everything to be defined out. Just make a small step-by-step approach. And that's why start small, implement, and also grow and scale as more and more value is being generated. Speaking of what's happening within the domains, let's talk about the heart of the data product. Treating data as a product. I think a lot has been said on this topic. Recently, I remember Sanjmo has written an amazing blog on cutting through all of this buzzword around data products and defining them beautifully. And we have done a similar approach as well internally, that along with the definition of data domains, we identified what is a data product. And for us, it's a combination of that technology and data that delivers the value in that business context. And it is linked with the life cycle management of that data product itself. One of the most challenging things is not the technical side of data product, but rather the change management and the mindset shift needed from the traditional approaches of separating the data warehousing team and data visualization and business analysts and IT and business in different camps, and bringing them together into one coherent data product team within that domain. That ownership of data, its code, it's how the data is moved from source systems into this analytical plane, and how it is structured for multiple use cases. That approach towards understanding the customer needs, what user experience that will have, whether it will be just a experience in terms of structured curated data sets, or will it be an export in terms of an API delivering data in a JSON format, or will it be a dashboard, will it be a mobile app, or a combination of all of that, providing a consistent set of data in all of these output ports. This is the heart at which this whole concept lives. If the team are not creating or providing that love towards the data, I'm afraid the journey of the data mesh and data product thinking will be very, very short. One important aspect that we also identified was what kind of modeling techniques, if any, we need to use. In our beginning, we went down with Data Vault, and we are still doing that. But we also realized that there are cases where we don't want to apply that because of the nature of that data, the already curated data sets that we might be receiving or buying, for example. And that has been a quick learning as well. One of my colleagues, Paul, has shared massively how to merge and explore Data Vault and data product approach. And I highly encourage you to watch those webinars and series of blogs and articles that has been written on that topic. Moving on to the third principle, the whole body on which these data products live, and the backbone of the data mesh initiative is this infrastructure and the platform. And it has been a very exciting journey because I'm sure like many of you or the experience that I have, like me, you must have done so many platform development and creation as well. But the approach that you need in the data mesh when it comes to doing platform is all about making sure that the other data domain product teams needs to use the platform. So how you are going to provide that developer user experience to them is going to be the key success factor on how the platform and the self-service infrastructure needs to be created. Like many companies, if you have not applied these thinking or not built a platform like this, you might have multiple platforms and you will have a different challenge in terms of bringing them together, or at least try to bring some of the layers and capabilities together where it makes sense. It's also important to understand that one tool will not solve the whole platform experience. One technology will not act as a silver bullet. So we need, and this is what we did, we took a capabilities-based approach. We defined these technical capabilities. I'll show you how our service capabilities and the technology layer model help us bring this mesh experience plane and data experience plane as the infrastructure experience plane together. The team has come a long way in elevating that. We have also provided some self-made tool to bring those lean value tree and data product design concepts in terms of a data mesh design studio, which helps provide that visibility across the organization on which teams are working to create those data products. We have just started that. It's an exciting area to work on because it brings in the principles of design and architecture together. At the same time, when we are applying this platform approach, the platform team also needs to take that product hat on, that they are enabling their services to the platform to the other teams to use. And that's also how you create the magic that the platforms can provide. You do it right, your products will be built on an infrastructure in a way using common policies. A lot of automation benefits, especially on the governance sides, can be built in. You can avoid multiple data integration that needs to take place between the tools. And if not to do it right way, is to do the work for the domain teams. And that's going to take us back to that centralized bottleneck teams that we need to change. And that has been a great learning journey for us. If I look at those layers, so if we look at from even the work that Jean-Marc shared in a book about how to design that platform, we looked at these three experience planes and we cut them across the different services, looking at which personas are required to access those service planes, for example. And then we divided them into the different logical services that those layers provide, and eventually linking them to the capabilities and the technologies that enable them. And that helped us cut this big elephant of the platform into tangible, composable architecture. We are still on our journey to provide a unified experience plane, although a lot of automation has taken place in the past 2 years. The workload on the product teams have simplified a lot, and I'm telling you that out of my own experience of how simply through configuration, a lot of things are happening. For example, publishing of your data products in our catalog is a fully automated process now. The shopping experience, which has gone live, is a fully automated process now. We can use observability monitors right away the day we go live. And it's one thing that people have asked, that do you need all of them from day one? And the answer is no, you don't. So again, run away from this perfection, although aim for it, strive for providing that amazing services to the data product team, but don't wait for everything to be settled in and available. Being transparent, listening to the domain teams, listening to the product teams as their customer to build these capabilities is going to be a key success factor in how these teams come together. I will share the principles that we are applying in terms of building upon the best practices of team topologies in the next few slides on how the teams can work together and what we have learned there so far. Last, but definitely not least, the fourth principle around federated computational governance. as I lovingly call the mind of our data mesh, as you are defining policies, going away from the traditional approaches of governing and controlling things on how to make that forum a more data sharing and enabling forum has been our biggest challenge, and still to date is the same challenge, because it's very easy to go back to those old practices of let's govern anything. To be honest with you all, I think you need some level of governance, whether I like the word or not. I can definitely acknowledge that use many times it has been a case that it's important to apply those governance practices as well, with clearly defined domain boundaries, for example. It will be also beneficial to include the platform teams in this, and that's where the exchange and the sharing takes place. And the more domains are onboarded, I think the sharing and what's happening, the best practice, it's like osmosis where you learn from each other and proudly copy paste the best practices so that others can use around it. To give you an example, here is a snapshot of a few months back on how our summary of our experience plane looks like, if you recall from the previous platform slide. Different domains being onboarded, creating their data products. We are summarizing whether the data products are fit, whether they are fulfilling those characteristics by having the service level indicators. We know how the data products are being consumed in different groups. We know how the data products are being served, the type of the data products, whether they are source oriented or aggregate or consumer oriented. And this provides visibility for all the domains of what's happening. One thing that we will be aiming to do is to also have visibility before things go live, when the teams are designing and thinking and discovering which data products to create. And that's where the data mesh design studio concepts comes in. Unfortunately, I will not be covering that today, but perhaps maybe in our follow-up session, something to share as well. As I mentioned before, I do want to take this opportunity to talk about team topology, something which has become very close to my heart recently as well, and the way I see how things have progressed in the industry around data, insights, and analytics, and how the teams have formed. And I see this amazing approach that Manuel and Matthew have provided in Team Topology's book can help us define these data product teams and platform teams and enabling teams, and maybe even complicated subsystem teams. So just to give you an example, I clearly see that these data product teams are these stream-aligned teams in the team topology definition. These are the teams that consume the services from the platforms, as I showed you before. And the platform team for this self-service data and infrastructure, providing that developer user experience to these teams, needs to enable those services so that these teams can consume and have that team interaction of X as a service interaction between them. There is an important role on taking your domain teams before even a product team is formed through the journey of starting from zero and becoming a hero in terms of delivering business value. And that's an important role that our enabling teams can do. I believe you will be hearing from our enterprise-wide platform program called Roche Data Insights also during this day, and I will let them share what has happened in this area as well. The enabling teams also play a key role in collecting this feedback from all the domains and sharing, as well as providing that feedback to the platform team. Sometimes which we forget about this, but I think it's an important role and the important interaction of facilitating that is taking place over there. We do have a gap where I highlighted this in a color of complicated subsystem teams, and we are exploring maybe the master data product teams could sit over here, because they specialize in this management of the master data, which by nature is a hub and spoke model and cannot be lived in one particular domain. We have not leveled and addressed that. So once we have done that, hopefully my colleagues who are addressing that, or myself, I will love to partner with them to share our learnings as we move forward with this approach. To conclude, Here is some of the key numbers on what's happening in our data mesh journey. You can see that we have onboarded 14 plus data domains. We have 15 plus operational data products already live. Our onboarding MVP time on a data product is just 6 to 8 weeks. Of course, people, their skills and capabilities, and the clarity of the use case and the outcome that we need to achieve is a key factor in achieving that 6 to 8 week journey. In some cases, not everything is rosy. We have also spent 4 weeks in just sorting out some access and policies for the new systems, by the way. So I don't want to give an impression to anybody that, oh my God, everything is perfect. No, we are learning. We have this can-do attitude across all our domain that even if we face obstacles, we need to find solutions. We need to come together to find solutions for our common end goal. Our collaboration on our Confluent, on our pages, on wiki pages, on Overflow is increasing every day by day as we have more and more developers and the data product team joining. Our releases have gone multi-folds because the data product teams are not blocked by the platform team for releases. Our CI/CD pipelines, our data ops approach have enabled the data product teams to deploy whenever they feel like they need to deploy. At least we have not come across the cases where we need to wait for the platform team to do our deployment. And I hope we don't find any such use cases in the beginning as well. Last but not the least, around the technology side, we have been exploring and onboarding different technologies, different clouds. Our platform is, of course, multi-cloud and using different services from all the 3 big cloud providers. Our data lives in the Snowflake, that's in different shapes and form. And that's also a great technology to have to provide true multi-use experience, which enables all these data product teams to share data, to reuse data specifically without making copies of it. So on that note, I encourage people to explore. I encourage people to provide feedback. I encourage all the best wishes to everyone who's especially in life sciences industry, but also outside that, who are exploring this data mesh journey. I look forward to learn from you. I look forward to explore what has been achieved in different shapes and forms. And a big thank you for the data mesh learning community to allow us to once again come and share our journey on this platform. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn or on Slack, and I look forward to this continued collaboration and learning. Thank you once again.
Fantastic. We always love hearing from Omar. He has so much wisdom and knowledge to share, having been on this journey for a number of years now. We will be hosting a few more sessions with Omar. We got some good ideas as we heard him talk today, and would love to have him back on to go deeper on some of the slides. There's so much depth on every slide that he presented. We want to just dig into each one of those. So we'll get back to that and dig in. And we'd love to hear from you if there's any specific topic that he went through that you'd like to get a little bit more information on. Please do let us know. Omar couldn't be with us live today. He might be in the chat. He had another conflicting event, but he said he would be happy to answer questions. So if you have questions for him, please post them in the chat. And we'll make sure that they get answered for you. What I thought was interesting in his talk, when he started about talking, not just focusing on one pillar of data mesh, you need a balance of all of these. I thought that was really interesting. And it's something we'll talk about in that Getting Started white paper that I mentioned earlier. And I also thought that the self-service infrastructure slide, where there's no one silver bullet technology, we hear that pretty frequently. I'm sure you all know that and understand that. That slide alone, so much information packed on there. I'd love to go deep on that one. And Omar also mentioned data as a product blogs by Sanjmo. That's with Sanjeev Mohan, and we'll be actually doing some talks about that topic. Sanjeev will be facilitating some meetups and discussions about that in the data mesh learning community. So if you want to join those, keep an eye on our meetups page and the Slack, and we'll be posting those relatively soon. And I thought the interesting part about aiming for perfection, but don't wait for it. We hear a lot of questions about that change management and how do you get there and how do you get the team to kind of work together. And I like the mindset of we're here, we're aiming for perfection, but it's not going to be perfect when we start. And let's come together to find solutions as we figure this out as we go. I think that mindset is really important as you go into a data mesh implementation. Is just, let's figure this out. The next talk we have is Mariana Heborn. Omar talked a bit about federated computation governance, the mind of data mesh. You need some governance, whether you like the word or not. Mariana is going to talk about the federated data governance journey that she had at Merck Group. She said it paves the way for broad experimentation and innovation in data in ways that were not previously possible, but that organizations should carefully consider how to do this safely and how to bring stakeholders along on the journey. So we're excited to have Mariana here. This is another pre-recorded talk, and Mariana is happy to answer questions. She couldn't be here today during this time slot, but she is happy to answer questions. So please, again, if you have them throughout the talk, ask them in the live stream chat, and we will make sure they are answered. With that, let's hear from Mariana.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me, Melissa. We'll spend the next 30 minutes talking about the key data mesh principles and how did they help the data governance initiative in the healthcare sector of our vibrant company, Merck, company really passionate for technology and science. For that, let me walk you through the agenda. First, we will have a look what is the data governance about, the data governance we are applying, and what are the benefits of using the data mesh principles. And I will share with you our approach and how did we start, how did we evaluate it, and how exactly the data mesh concept was helpful for us to improve our initiative. So let's start. As I mentioned, we're on a data-driven journey as the majority of the organizations nowadays. And on that journey, we are aware that there is a very high complexity and that there could be a roller coaster of ups and downs and non-expectable events. That's why it was really very important to us to have a clear goal. And that's why the fair data, the findable, accessible, interchangeable, and reusable data was something, not just the buzzword, but really wanted to have data at optimal quality in a compliant way and ideal speed when we work with the data. And this was the goal for the data governance initiative as a base for all the data analytics initiatives and projects and goals in the organization. The situation that we would like to mind is the one like the one seen in Alice in Wonderland, where Alice comes to a fork on the road and sees the Cheshire cat and asks her, which way should I take? And the cat answers, where do you want to go? And Alice says, I don't know. So we wanted to know where do we want to go, because the answer is really, then it doesn't matter. Our way was the way to the fair data, and our main problems that we wanted to solve were the silos in terms of knowledge, workarounds, and the increasing amount of data. This is something I think I don't need to explain to the audience, that the data amount is increasing every day. And another problem we are facing is the monolithic approach. With the increasing amount of data, our teams can't make it to answer properly all the questions coming to them every day. That's why in this case, oh sorry, in this case, the data mesh concept is something that really can help to shape and reshape the data governance approach. Let's have a look at the 4 principles. I think the majority of the people are aware of them, but having a domain-oriented and ownership and architecture is something that is not only data governance specific and helpful, but also for every single data initiative and undertaking. And the self-data infrastructure as a platform and having data as handling data as a product as a and the federated data governance and semantic consistency. Those 4 principles are really um, the leading guiding principles of not only of the data mesh concept, but also of our data governance strategy when we started shaping our approach. And that's it. So we have, what is data governance about? It's who is doing what with the data and what are the standards and the processes. It means our framework has 3 main pillars: the roles and responsibilities. We have the 4 roles of the domain owner, data owner, business and technical data steward. And here you can see that this decentralized domain principle is already incorporated in the framework. We want to have different SMEs and people working on one data domain and sharing their knowledge about rules and guardrails for the data included in that domain, and also about the standards and the processes that apply to the data. Let's give you an example. In the healthcare sector, there are commercial and medical activities, and they should be really separated from each other. And this can be done by the people from commercial should be integrated and interact with the people from the medical function, but there should be integrity and interchange so that both domains have really a clear compliance rule that says commercial activities are not allowed to access medical activities and medical data. And that was somehow given with that approach. So how we did it? We started step by step. First, understanding the whole field. It means in the healthcare sector, we have 3 different functions, and these functions should work together in not in a hierarchical way, but in a federated data governance model. And that was a good way to start our work. And the strategy we were following was a pull strategy rather than a push one. We started really approaching the people and asking what should we focus first in order to shape our domains, to find the data assets within the domains. I'm aware of the word asset and not data set. It means that data should have a special value to the organization. As we have a huge amount of data, we can't start governing all the data at once. We wanted to start with the most valuable data for the domains, for the sector, for the organization. That's why really communication, one-to-one interviews with leaders, with SMEs were needed to find out, okay, those are our domains, those are our data assets in the domains, and um, as we wanted to find and not to make data owners and data stewards, we had a look who is already working with the data, who is more on the owner side, aware of the requirements, and who is more hands-on the data. So everything looked pretty well. We had our data governance initiative launched. If you look at the data mesh principles, they were integrated. We had a federated governance. We had a domain-driven data model. And the data the people took care of were at the self-serve data ecosystem structure, data ecosystem. And we had a pretty positive balance at the end with 28 data domains and data assets, and with over 80 owners and stewards taking care of these data assets. The KPIs really worked pretty well, but at the end, somehow the entire initiative was like a duck, pretty calm at the surface, and we were somehow paddling underneath. People didn't exactly understand why should they do something that they have been doing for years, like formalizing the rules about the data, about the data quality, for example. It was not really clear to them, why should I start managing data quality now, although I have been doing it for the last decade. And at that point, we went a step back and started thinking, okay, where is the problem? Why are the KPIs looking so well, but the people are not up to date? Why they're doing data governance? And the answer was that people need more collaboration. And we started this decentralization of the teams. We started extending it. So if you look at the left side of the picture, you can see a data domain, data asset, and the different functions, the people working and taking care of one data asset, they came from the different functions, but also from the enabling functions like compliance, security, cybersecurity, privacy. Before that, they were really external consultants, so that if the data owners and data stewards team of the data asset webinar data in the commercial function, if they need the consultancy of compliance, they can go to the open hours. And after the evaluation, we started really integrating compliance, cybersecurity as part of the team. It means that they are not just external consultants, but they're really part of this decentralized team, and they shape the rules, and they started documenting the data together with the SMEs in the team. And this it came out that the different functions have different priorities for the data governance. For example, commercial was more into processes for data, for compliant data. As I mentioned, medical and commercial, they needed more formalized rules for these activities that should be linked to the data and formalized and then presented at the data, at the self-serve data ecosystem. And operations, they needed more reliable data quality that was given with the collaboration of data analytics, data owners, and cybersecurity. And I don't say that we are really, we have solved all the problems now, but it's now a continuous step-by-step improvement of our data governance initiative. And the measure elements, the key elements we were using were really intensive decentralization and federation of the model. So we could really scale and give a transparency for the entire organization and for the activities within this data governance and data management across all the functions, not only across the measure research and development, operations, and commercial functions in our healthcare sector. Yes, and as a summary, as key takeaways, as I mentioned, the decentralization should not only be narrowed in one function, but spread across the functions. And the domain-driven architecture was really applied in all the different disciplines, so that the data as a product was shaped not only by one of the functions, but really by all the functions by all the departments that are really working with those data, and they were really hands-on contributors when it was up to defining a rule, democratizing the data, and giving really the power of the data to the people. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Fantastic talk from Mariana. Great to hear about the progress that they made on their journey as they're continuing to go through it and just sharing learnings along the way. What I thought was interesting, data governance, they had started this project, we weaved the data mesh principles throughout their governance journey. And one of the key takeaways I heard beyond what she said was the effort of collaboration, creating collaboration amongst the different groups to avoid those silos is such an important part of data mesh journey. So it's interesting to hear her echo that. She talked about the evaluation results that she had experienced the first evaluation, and people were asking about why start managing data quality now, et cetera. And the solution being more collaboration across different domains, bringing in compliance, cybersecurity, having them not just be these external consultants, but having them be part of the team. And I think that's one of the key things we hear data mesh can help do, which is just enable more collaboration and more understanding throughout the organization of what the data means and how it can work for different groups. So really cool to hear that. If you have questions for Mariana, please do ask, and we will make sure that they get answered. We have a break now scheduled. Our next talk will start at 8:20, so we have a little bit of extra time for our break. If you need to grab a snack or dinner or whatever you need, please go ahead. While we wait, I wanted to share a few details about the breakout session that will take place at the end of the conference. It's a great way to meet other attendees who are on their data mesh journey. Again, I mentioned it's like a hallway track. So this is, even though it's not live, we wanted to create space for everyone to meet and greet each other, and share where you're at on your data mesh journey. We'll share with you a link to a Zoom at the end, a Zoom link. No account is required. Once everyone is on, we will split you into evenly into breakout rooms of up to 10 people, no more than 10 people. We want you to be able to have a really good conversation with the people that you meet. It will be 60 minutes. You are not required to stay on the entire time. You can stay on for whatever length you are available. And once everyone's on, we'll wait a few minutes and we'll split you into breakout rooms. And we want you to introduce yourself, share where you are in your data mesh journey, and what was your most interesting takeaway or talk from today's event. The room will end on the hour. Again, you can stay on as short as long as you like. There won't be a moderator from the data mesh team on. So if you have any issues or anything like that, just let us know in the live stream chat again, and we'll do our best to help you out there. And we hope that this is helpful for you. So as I mentioned, we are now going to have a break until 8:20. We'll have our next presenter come on. It will be data mesh strategies in pharma and life science, insights from industry leaders, with Amara Gafour from ThoughtWorks and Antonio Agudo from Roche Diagnostics. So we'll see you back on at 8:20. Thanks, everybody. Okay, everybody, welcome back to Data Mesh Days for Life Sciences. We are glad to have you here. We had a little bit longer break than we intended to, so I hope you're able to grab some snacks and coffee and maybe wine, perhaps, and enjoy the rest of the event. The next talk we have is with Amara Ghafour of ThoughtWorks and Antonio Agudo of Roche Diagnostics. They will be talking about data mesh strategies in pharma and life science, insights from industry leaders. Let's bring on Amara and Antonio. Hello. Oh, looks like they're connecting with audio. Amara, Antonio, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you for having us, Melissa.
Lovely. Well, go ahead and introduce yourselves and go ahead and dive into your talk when you're ready.
Absolutely. I'm just going to share my screen and we can go and do the introductions together. Is my screen visible okay?
Yep, looks great.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for having us here. My name is Amara. The topic for today is data mesh in life sciences. And this is, rather than going into depth right now, it's a little bit focusing on the life science industry. And we would like to bring to you the challenges, the trends, and opportunities that we observe. And here we have today. So I'm Amara. I'm a principal technology consultant. I work for ThoughtWorks. And for the last 2.5 years, I've been working with Roche for their data mesh implementation journey. You already had the chance to hear from Omar at the start of the day. But just like Omar mentioned, when you're talking about a program and you want to scale a program, you really need to think about it as a program. So I've brought with me today my colleague. Antonio, maybe you want to introduce yourself too?
Yes, thank you. I'm Antonio Agudo. I'm based in Madrid. I play different roles. I joined the company almost 20 years ago as a sysadmin. Now I'm a program manager. I joined this program RDI, and that is trying to involve, is aiming to implement a Roche data mesh in the company in November. And let's get this started, Amara. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. All right. So what can you expect from this talk? The life science industry is really exciting, and it's always been at the edge of experimentation, at the edge of trying out what's new, what's happening. And interestingly, we have a lot of life science company and pharmaceutical companies that are actually publicly either embracing data mesh, working on data mesh, or at least talking about data mesh, about how they're trying to implement it. And I had the incredible opportunity through data mesh learning community as such to speak with representatives from many of these companies that I'm showing on my screen here right now, and to talk about their data mesh journeys. What are the common trends that they really see? And yeah, I thought I could bring the outcomes of those conversations to you here today. So some of the highlights. So let's start. In 2023, the survey is that 84% of organizations in the life science industry are still talking about increased investments in data and analytics. Now, of course, this survey came out at the start of 2023 in Jan, and since then, we've had some changes in the world in terms of financial stability, I would say. Having said that, the trend still, as of today, is that there is an increased investment in data and analytics. And 80% of the reportees are actually reporting that the biggest problem that they face is not technology, but people, process, as well as culture. And so in these conversations, and I think I spoke to more than, I would say, 30 to 40 people from data stewards, data leaders, data mesh experts from these organizations. And when I asked them, what is the most highlighted reasons? Why do you want to do data mesh? It wasn't really that surprising to hear that interdepartment or inter-global functional data interoperability was the core reason. So as long as it was about use cases within a particular domain or within a particular function, global function, it was fine. We're doing quite well. It's really about once you needed data from a different department that it started getting difficult. the amount of time, the average time to incorporate a new data source or to migrate a data source and make that available to consumers is anywhere between 6 months to 2 years. And so this is no longer acceptable in the current world that we live in. So the need to have a shorter lead time to incorporate new data sources was something that was extremely important to our customer base as well. Especially for the life science space, automated regulatory compliance was a concern, and the hope that data mesh could potentially ease the process as it exists today is one of the reasons why we want to embrace data mesh. So there's no direct a correlation between data products, data mesh, and regulatory compliance. But the idea is that if we simplify the process, if we make the data more transparent, if we're including aspects of versioning and history, and we clearly know whose regulatory compliance work could become more efficient and less time consuming. We also spoke about a lot about higher data quality, which is not very specific to the life science industry, but is a general trend as to why people want to embrace data mesh at all. For those industries that are implementing data mesh, their core challenges, or the most highlighted top 4 challenges, seem to be: 1, lack of incentive. So especially when it's about if I'm producing, for example, if I'm very close to the source system and I'm producing source data products, and the visibility or the business value is really downstream for the use cases or the domains, who's incentivizing me really? So where is the incentive for me to actually maintain this data, treat it as a data product, and actually provide high quality of services to other data consumers? Project to product thinking was a very core concern that most of our work that is currently being done in many of these organizations, whether they were startup level or they're already been with the 5,000 people scale, or organizations of the scale of Roche as well, which is quite huge in multiple countries and industries. Project thinking is still the core, and then agile thinking is something that is still in progress, with people embracing aspects like SAFe, and then we are applying another layer on top of it, which is like product thinking, right, to your data. So this entire shift from project to product thinking is really a huge organizational change management topic. Another core topic, which is very specific to the life science industry itself, is the fact that many healthcare life science organizations or pharmaceutical companies don't actually have a lot of internal developer talent. A lot of it is like working with partners or software delivery partners. So most of these teams that are actually producing the data products are not internal to the companies. So when you're talking about ownership, there's a whole new question about who's owning it when they are not really internal to the company. So this industry is actually still, software and IT is very traditionally reporting to the finance segment or the finance reporting hierarchy. And as a result, is still very commonly viewed as a cost saving center rather than an innovation center. So when we talk about data mesh and ownership of your data products, who will own it is a common trend as well. And finally, a challenge here was about analysis paralysis, that when we are spending a lot of time actually identifying which data product do we want to build and which is the exact right use case that we want to go for. So a lot of times we spend weeks and up to months. So this was very, very often highlighted, that analysis paralysis is something that organizations are struggling with and dealing with. So while challenges are always important, also to know who's struggling with what, and you feel okay, fine, I'm not the only person who's having these pains that I'm facing. It's also important to look at who are the strong performers that are doing well in this journey. What is it that they're focusing on? And here, this was quite interesting in the sense of what is the most highlighted, what's next in our journey. So the first thing here was about the federated governance spectrum. Now, federated governance, federated computational governance, this is not a new topic. I mean, it's new in the data mesh world, of course, but governance itself is not very new. And everybody's trying to get it right. Everybody's trying it. And so why is this what people are doing correctly? Gartner basically in their report for 2023 published what is called as this federated governance spectrum. And so what they tried to do here was not to tell exactly that these different aspects of governance should be centralized, federated, or decentralized, But high performers or performers that are advanced in their data mesh journey in the life science industry are actually creating very clean visibility between and transparency of where on the spectrum is their governance actually available. So there is still a lot of misunderstanding between centralized governance, federated governance, and decentralized governance. So a visibility like this, that in our company, this exactly will be centralized, these components will be federated, and certain other components will be decentralized, and then making this very visible and transparent to the company as well, actually brings a lot of, or solves a lot of problems, and saves a lot of times in discussion as well. The second aspect is basically investing in developer experience. Quite rightly highlighted, if you expect teams to go that extra mile to build data products, then you have to make their life easier. You can't just say jump through extra hoops and then don't make your life easier, right? So the developer experience from two lenses, from the lens of the data product developer, but also from the platform developer, right? So you're trying to invest into the developer experience for both, taking into consideration compliance, speed, and scale. And this is an example from Gilead, where they're really investing into this and realizing that if you make it easier for developers to actually build data products easily with a short lead time, then they will actually do it. If you put a lot of barriers in front of it, then that's something that you would try and avoid, and you would try and go through different areas. At Roche, this is something that we are heavily investing into it as well. And Omar basically spoke about this in the first talk that we had today. What else? The next most highlighted, what next is basically clear executive direction. And this is something many of us have actually really experienced, that if we don't have clear executive direction, and that's easier said than done, what happens is that you're spending bulk of your effort to actually just sell the concept, right? You're constantly trying to convince people, you're constantly trying to spend energy, time, and effort in executive buy-in. You're chasing after people saying, hey, you should do this. And you could do it in multiple ways, and Antonio will tell us a little bit more about how we did it at Roche. But the idea is that in whatever way you want to try and track it, whether it's by OKRs or by lean value trees or whatever is your way of tracking business metrics, making different domains and teams actually measurable for what they're doing for the data mesh of the company, how they're progressing on their data mesh journey, itself is a great incentive for them to start adopting these practices. Some companies, for example, AstraZeneca has a company policy for one of their business departments where their progress is measured, or their business value is measured by how many data products can be used actually potentially by other domains, or are being consumed by other business domains. So such projects and teams get higher, faster funding than, say, other teams. At Roche, for example, we also are looking at, we have what we call as the onboarding process, like onboarding to your Roche data mesh. And so we look at how many domains and how many of the business units actually have gone through this onboarding process, or where in the journey of this onboarding process that they are. And so, yeah, so you can look at it the way you want, or however you're measuring value in your organization, but companies that are doing well in their data mesh journey have some executive direction here, or have some executive buy-in on this level. How you can get this executive buy-in is perhaps maybe by having one success case or two success cases, and then taking that to your executive saying, hey, this is tangible benefit, and this is the tangible value that we have proven, and therefore we would like for this to be executively pushed for. And finally, in terms of it, is a new idea as well that's really gaining traction in the last couple of quarters, I would say, is the idea of what is decision products. Decision products is not really brand new anything, but the whole idea is that let's not invest into building all data products. All data does not need to be data products, but we need to have this critical data that's valuable and reusable. And that is in your journey, in your process journey, there are certain decision points. So data that is intangible, without which these decision points cannot be made, such data should really be built as data products. And maybe building this before and identifying this early in your journey, so that you can actually clearly see which decisions can be made faster, decisions can be made more efficiently. And such decisions quite honestly are often cross-domain decisions, right? You have multiple domains that need to work together to come to such decisions. So work backwards from the decision point. And then what is it that you would like to do? What is the decision product that you have? So it could be something like a consumer product. And then one step further, what are the data products from different business domains that can come together in order to enable this decision? So really working backward from your process journey, whether it's within the company or whether it's customer facing. So it could be your value stream, or it could be a customer journey, but identifying your decision points. And so, yeah, so this is really the trends. We have mentioned it a couple of times today on the talk that data mesh is a multi-year journey. And sometimes when we're in this journey, we often get a little demotivated, or why are things not moving fast enough, or why is it not happening, or why is it not exploding? But we must remember that for any kind of change and transformation, in the first, we always have what is called as the early market, and the early market are usually technology enthusiasts. These are like the early adopters and the visionaries. Then you really hit the chasm, and then you really become like move into the mainstream market. So it's important that you do the basics and the fundamentals here, right, for the early adopters, and then you don't forget that you need to scale. So prioritize whatever is needed for scaling, and keep in mind scaling is not just about building it, or a few of us know what needs to be done, but rather making sure that you take the change management aspect of it, the internal training aspect of it, the technology training, the business training that goes with it, so that you can actually really scale it to the early majority as well as the late majority. And yeah, if you are right now in any one of these stages, remember this is generally also the market trend, or the trend that has happened with any major change that has happened, including microservices or, for example, Agile. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes on one or two examples that I brought along, and then I don't really speak for the company AstraZeneca. I've drawn information based on certain interviews I had with stakeholders at AstraZeneca and some public presentations that they've made on this topic. But again, so this is information that I've drawn from there. Something I found really interesting here was they're using data mesh and data products, were very, very targeted to reduce the time to development in their center of excellences. So they are prioritizing their work on their center of excellences, and they believe that one way that they can measure their success is if they're able to do more modeling experiments. So one of their core business use cases requires them to do a lot of modeling experiments, and so they're measuring success by the number of modeling experiments they can do, and how they are actually achieving it, or the goals that they're going for, or what they have prioritized really is per center of excellence, or per department of center of excellence, they have dedicatedly one data product team. The data products are basically used as building blocks that can quickly be brought together. And they're using DDD workshops, like domain-driven design workshops, and event storming as a methodology to actually identify these data products, as well as where are the boundaries of the domains of where these data products should actually sit. So this was like an interesting approach there. From what I understand, in one of these departments at AstraZeneca, they're really trying to target it and go towards, they work backwards from a business case that they needed, and they realized that they were able to, if they target the number of modeling experiments, and with this approach that they would be able to scale it from there. And they did have success here as well. They had 70% time reduction in the amount of time, the lead time it takes from the data being asked for, and being available to their data scientists for the modeling experiments. So that was for AstraZeneca. Another example was for GSK, who are also quite open and active about public about their data mesh journey. They have a really interesting online material available in terms of what they do for data mesh. And they have like a really cool slogan that I found really interesting. So if you're working in the data space, you'll often hear it's the one source of truth, right? It's the finance data, one source of truth, or it's the customer data, one source of truth. So they have the slogan of no source of truth. We will only build what's needed. So it's like this just-in-time development, which I thought was super cool. They are starting from a customer approach. They're really going with design thinking here. They're setting vision and strategic direction. They put a lot of energy and effort in spreading awareness. So they're really treating it like products. And then they're partnering with the development team. So they have like a design team and a development team, then basically openly being transparent about the roadmap of what's coming up and really treating it like any other product with product showcases. So you have data product showcases as well. Their measure of success is basically active users, so number of data, downstream consumers of your data products, and then kind of applications as well where these data products are used, not limited to dashboards only. It could be ML, it could be AI. And yeah, also the kind of users who are actually being impacted. So it's a very design-driven approach to how they're treating their data, which was quite interesting as well. So with this, thank you very much. I would like to now hand over to my partner, Antonio, because we do represent Roche here, and I think it would be really cool for us to talk about what we're doing at Roche as well.
Yeah, thank you, Amara. What I'd like to explain to you in the next minutes is how we are supporting from the company the Roche data mesh implementation. No, Amara and Omar today they explained that we started around 2 years ago, no, and we started building a concept of a program, no, program management with different projects and different initiatives that were running. During this year, we've been living a transformation into more from project to product. So we are currently implementing SAFe in our organization. So we are moving to different concepts, no? And now what we call this is one a strategic theme. And Roche data and insights as a strategic theme, what we are doing are providing the different steps and the flow of steps to provide value, no? To deliver value to our customers, to our patients. We are in the life science industry, and our main customer is patients. And then what we have in this slide are what we selected at either if it is a program or if it is a strategic thing, are the key pillars of what we are doing. No? We're aiming to deliver benefits to the company, to deliver benefits to our customers. And how we do this? So first, we need to engage at all the levels of the organization, from the top to the bottom and bottom to the top. This is driving executive buy-in. So we need to keep the organization active and to share the message. Scalable. We are in a global organization. Everything that we select that is going to be delivered should be at the way that is scalable for the whole organization. And always we need to keep in mind that it's easy to maintain and sustain in the future. So even if we are always asking for delivering faster to our customers, so deliver value, this should be something that we maintain and sustain for a longer period of time. How we measure the success of this? Omar, an hour ago, explained that we have identified around 50 data domains. Okay, we have different implementation of data mesh. What we are doing is we would like to have a common implementation of data mesh, and then we like to onboard all these 50 data domains into a common Roche data mesh implementation. And we need to measure the impact. Know what is the value that with these data domains, data products, and use case we are delivering to our customers. Could you please go to the next one, Amara?
Sure.
Thank you. And now let me give you a bit more of details, know how we are structured. The first layer that we have in the organization is our sponsors. Analysis, paralysis by analysis, you mentioned, right? It is normally happens in a lot of organizations. What we have with this group of executive leaders is they are in our business. So they quickly identify the business challenges and they are already sponsorship. So we can quickly jump into this initiative and then we can design a new data domain or a new data product and a new use case. So we have the direct support from them. This is why it is really important that we express the message across the organization. Then if we go to the purple, to the column that is purple, then we have a permanent team. This is where the Agile Program Management Office is, no? And then we have people that are helping with all the communication, leading the transformation, the organizational change management activities. And we have different artifacts like forums, architecture forum, data sharing forum that are helping us to define the governance model, the definition of the products, and the framework, no? The prioritization that we are using to onboard new data domains, products, and use cases. In the middle, what we have are the data domains. These are long life team. This is a very important concept that, again, moving to a product mindset takes some time, but later it gives you benefits, you know? So it's worth to spend some time and asking for the right team that is already established and will be able to make the whole life cycle of the data domain and the product. And then we have in green, the foundation. No, it's not only capabilities, it's also the people that are going to work, that are supporting all these initiatives, and the technology. No? A part of all these consultants, a part of all these experts that are helping us in the data and analytics field, we have a self-service platform with our catalog that is where the data products are. No? It's available to be consumed by the data products. Okay, you please go to the next one. Okay. And we talk a lot about this, but we're not going to go to all the details of this slide, but I would like to highlight how we internally work. We identified a business challenge, we detected something, and we immediately jump into this. So we don't spend time in preparing requirements, testing phase, and stay a lot of time discussing about what are we going to do. So we'd rather jump into a use case, and this initiative or collaboration we produce something, maybe a data domain, maybe a new data product, or even a sample use case. No? But with this, we are learning. We are learning into this journey, and we are delivering value since the very beginning of the activities that we are doing. This is a long journey. It's started 2 years ago, again, a program, a strategic theme with all this composition, and we still see that we are far away from complete this. It is a running exercise that will continue during the next years. And with this, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And yeah, if you have any questions, we're happy to, you can reach out to us on the Data Mesh Learning community on Slack, or you can reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to support you in depth. 30 minutes is a small time, so we rush through a lot of topics as well. But yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, great to have you all on. And if anybody does have questions, please ask in the live stream. They're here. Let's ask them while they're here. What I thought was interesting, some of the common theme from the last talk to this one was how to incentivize people to participate, how to explain why it matters, how to get that buy-in and collaboration needed at the beginning, but also keeping people inspired throughout the process because it's a multi-year journey. So it was interesting to hear some of those same things repeated from talk to talk as ways that you can kind of manage the change management part of that as we go throughout these journeys. So thank you both for your presentation, very helpful information. Up next, we have Alexander Greb-de-Baron from Bayer talking about a use case, a specific example of what they did to build the real-world data store, RWD. It's a human and machine-friendly self-service data product. It accelerates real-world evidence generation across the lifelong patient pathway from pre-diagnosis to treatment. The company achieved this by embracing data mesh and the data product approach, shifting that mindset internally, like we've been talking about throughout this event, from application-centric thinking to data-centric thinking, and the data being exposed to many users and many domains. So let's welcome on Alexandra, and we will have her start her talk. Hi, Alexandra, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Nice to meet you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for doing this today. Please start with an intro and you can get your talk started when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, I'm Alexandra. Wait, let me just share my screen and get it. Share, and I go into presentation mode. Okay, hi. So I'm Alexandra. I'm working as Head of Data Design and Architecture in the Medical Affairs Pharmacovigilance, IT and Digital team at Bayer. And I'm going to present today on the Real-World Data Store, a data product that accelerates evidence generation. And yeah, I'm always impressed by the scale of data mesh at Roche. So here today with my talk, you will see more bottom-up approach from a bunch of data mesh enthusiasts. And just disclaimer, the opinions expressed are my own and not necessarily those of Bayer. And yeah, I want to show you a bit, I want to go into this use case around real-world data, so you understand also why we need the real-world data as a data product, and then explain a bit what is the real-world data store, and then how we build the products that customers love, and also connect it a bit to the data mesh principles, and also share some learnings we have. So real-world evidence is basically all kind of health data that we collect or that is available around patients outside of the typical clinical trials that pharma companies are doing. So these can be electronic health records in hospitals. This can be insurance claims. This can also be mobile or wearable data. Can also be social media data. And this information is very interesting for us in the pharma industry, because we can use this kind of data for the complete pharma value chain. So in the very early part of drug discovery, we understand the burden of disease for our patients. We can learn on disease mechanisms, incidence and prevalence of certain diseases. And in the clinical development, we can augment our clinical trials with real-world data to speed up the clinical trials, and to make them also more real-world-like, so not too artificial here. And also post-marketing phase 4 studies, when the drug is then on the market. Of course, we want to observe how it is doing in a much broader patient population. Maybe you remember with the COVID vaccines, for example, some rare side effects you only find once the vaccination is used by many million people. And so we also want to understand better the benefit risk pattern of or profile of our drugs, and also, of course, compare it with our competitors. And so the real-world data store purpose was, so you can see that many different groups, many different functions use real-world data, but usually these are, the data is rather scattered. So you have different project teams that collect this kind of data or buy this kind of data, and they use it within their programs. But normally there's not so much of an incentive to share them with a broader colleagues from other functions. And we wanted to create this central place, bringing together information around real-world data, make them also easier accessible for many more colleagues at Bayer, and also to link more information to the real-world data sources, so that also our real-world data community at Bayer can share learnings and experiences and knowledge around them. And we think this real-world data could perfectly be offered as a data product. So I hope I have convinced you about the value we can have out of real-world data, and also from a technology business perspective, does it make sense to create a product? So I strongly recommend to start building a product only if you have a good use case, and also if you know what kind of data is available and if it's really feasible to make it available as a product. Then, as we have learned, data products serve normally the secondary use of data. So real-world data is a typical example. So in hospitals, you collect this data to monitor the treatment of your patients. But here at pharma company, we use these data for other use cases, as I have explained earlier. So a secondary use of the data. And here also this idea from application-centric to data-centric. With real-world data, we usually buy this data from data providers. So they are naturally taken out of their original place of where they are created. So for example, hospital systems, and they are offered usually as structured or semi-structured data to us. So we can build this data-centric product around this. And then that has been mentioned before, of course, this idea of data as a product to create user delight, offering them the data for different kinds of users, making them easily discoverable, understandable, for the user community. And what does the real-world data store look like? So we started with rather simple dashboard by bringing together what kind of data sources we have at all at Bayer. So we didn't have an overview, and we registered data in a data catalog with some meta information to make them easily findable, comparable. And so that's also part of our fair data principles that have been mentioned before, giving them also a unique identifier. And then the second product we have is a bit more detailed. Medical definition library is a place to describe patient cohorts, because we also made a lot of user research, what people want to do with real-world data, where are the hurdles. And here it's also quite time consuming to build these patient population definitions, and so providing context around real-world data. And there we also created this library where people can share their definitions with others. And that's also a part of the interoperability aspect of the FAIR principles, to link the data and create some context around the data. And then the most important product of the real-world data store, of course, are the real-world data assets, to make them accessible and usable for our data science colleagues in a cloud environment with high performance. And also here we think of this platform idea to create these reusable data services, so that in future maybe we can also provide these services not only to real-world data, but maybe also different data types. And the store, I mean, of course, the numbers of Roche are much more impressive. Maybe we can only compete with the terabytes of data that we have. Thinking that we also started 2 years ago and started with one real-world data source, and now we have grown to 20 data sources. We could also by replacing outdated technology and bringing together the scattered solutions into this one data product, save a lot of run cost also by optimizing our cloud infrastructure. And we have one dedicated DevOps team that is managing the whole data product. So you see it's really only a handful of people driving this end-to-end processes. And we also onboarded cross-functional users. So it's really the data products are, so on the one hand, data are provided by different functions, and they are also used across functions. And that is also, yeah, quite new, I would say. And also, by the way we have set it up, we can easily exchange data, for example, with our commercial colleagues, because we are using the same Snowflake platform. And then we also connect the data sources to different analysis environments. So also here, looking at the user needs, some prefer to work with SAS as an analytics environment, others prefer R and Python, and others use the OMOP data with Atlas, and we can connect it to all these different environments. And we have originally set our product up in the US domain, and now we are also setting this up in the Asian region and in Europe, because these are also restrictions that come with the data sometimes. And coming a bit to data mesh principles, as was already mentioned by Omar in the first talk, you touch upon all the principles if you implement a data product. So here, connecting to domain-oriented ownership, so the real-world data stewards. I don't like to call them data owners, because in the end the data is owned by the company, and we have them more like custodians of the data, and they translate the license agreements into data usage rules. So to drive our access management here. Then, of course, data as a product. We have a product team that offers these different real-world data services around this. And now we also have a downstream product team that uses our real-world data store for, in their product to provide more visualization of our real-world data and patient populations. And then looking at computational governance. So here we have, as I said, register all real-world data sources in our data catalog, and also ask for a minimum of metadata that helps us in connecting the different data sources, making them comparable, and providing this context around the data sources. And then the self-serve data platform. So we have set up this cloud infrastructure, reusable data services, doing a lot of automation of the data ingestion pipeline, and also using an authorization service that can then also be easily used for other data domains. And here we are also a bit in a conflict. So are we now more a data product team for real-world data, or maybe also transforming more into a platform team offering these services to a broader, other types of data, other data product teams in the future? Looking a bit into how we build this. So it was also mentioned before, a key part of a product is to be very user-centric. So we also love the design thinking approach, looking really into the user problem first, and then come up with a solution. And of course, the fair data principles that allow us to really reuse and connect the data. I think that's really the mesh, or enabling the mesh in this data mesh approach. And then also having user-centric measures of success here. And so to really look, how is the data product adopted? How many active users do you have? How frequently is the product used? And also important, in a big company, you cannot underestimate the importance of communication. So really communicate broadly that this data product is available or that a certain data service is available. You have to really communicate in many different channels to make people aware of your solutions. Yeah, and then just some challenges and learnings. Yeah, very important, I think, is to have the first follower to start with a movement and find these early adopters that believe in you, because otherwise people will question, will you be able to scale up? Will you bring the performance? And once you start and have a showcase, it's much easier to convince the others to follow you. So it's important to have a good sponsor. Takes some time to gain the trust of the users, and we have learned that we can gain the trust by really being very responsive and fast. So maybe you have seen we can provide a new data source now within a couple of days, and in the past that was more a question of several weeks to make this possible. And yeah, the challenge I see with a broader or scalable approach is really the mesh idea. So I think we have a lot of different data domains and different products, but yet they are more living in silos, and we have to come up with this mesh connecting these data products together, also finding these overarching governance rules, overarching services that can be reused. So this is still something we have to work on. And what's also a challenge, if you create these products to be used cross-functionally, sometimes there's the challenge who is then paying for these products, right? So if you have many customers, that's also a challenge in big company. And with this, I also want to thank my team that has made it all possible, and hand back to Melissa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I was curious. I had a couple of questions for you. We've talked about getting buy-in, incentivizing people to kind of start this process. And you mentioned that you found these early adopters. How did you do that at Bayer? What was motivating to these early adopters to want to be part of this process?
Yeah, I think it's really to serve first their needs, right? So they want to have easy access to the data, and we provide it with the condition that they also make it then available to other users, right? And we help them to set this up, for example, describing the rules of access. That's mainly what they have to do. And then also being prepared to answer questions of more users coming and being interested in the data. But I think what really then encourages people is if they see they also get access to other data sources that they haven't had before. And then maybe you're also willing to, pay a little bit more into it. So it's like a give and take. And now users see they really have much more possibilities here. And I think that's also kind of, it's not really an incentive for them, but at least a motivation maybe to participate.
Right. And it sounds like it was similar to what we heard. I think Omar say too, start small and grow a little bit. So you started with one, and then now people are seeing the value, and that's motivating for them to want to participate. So, and what has been the most challenging part of this process for you as you've gone through it? And how did you all overcome that?
I think it's still the trust. So because I think with real world data and the kind of work we are doing is, of course, in the end, there are patient lives behind that, right? So you have to make sure that really experts work with the data, and that the analysis that are done then also, have a high quality. And that's a bit where people I think especially in pharma are reluctant to go into this sharing of data, right? So it's more, usually people are more protective and rather want to control data access. So I think here we still have to work on that. So at least for broader community of experts, the data is available. There's still reluctancy to make the data more explorable in, for example, dashboards for users that maybe are not these kind of very these experts of the data. But here we are also trying to come up with little use cases and show the value, and maybe build on the common easy questions that come with data that maybe could be really answered with these dashboards without having this danger of misinterpreting results that come up. So I think that's a bit the challenge here. Yeah.
Do you think that something like the federated governance is going to continue to help with that as you go, or are there other types of solutions that you think will help with that process, or is it just time? I mean, trust always takes time, and making sure that you do it right and you see the kind of proof points. But I'm curious, what are you seeing?
Yeah, we hope also to get more into this computational governance aspect. So right now we don't have too much computation behind it, but the idea is, for example, to work with this kind of data, you need certain trainings, and we could in the future maybe then, if a person applies for the data, get the training records right out of the system. So we don't have to ask them anymore, did you do the training? So simple things like that. And we could think in the future, maybe if we have all these rules around a data source explained, described in an also computational manner, maybe then we don't even have to go through these access processes anymore. So colleagues would naturally have access to the data according to which kind of group they are working in, which kind of expertise they have. And I think that could also maybe remove even this way of federated governance, or at least involving the data stewards in giving access to each and every colleague in the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. In fact, that is the topic of our next talk. So it'll be interesting to hear what they talk about in terms of federated computational governance, and see if that maybe might solve some of the things that you're talking about. And so what's next for you in your data mesh journey? Where are you looking to go in the next 6-12 months at Bayer?
Yeah, so we are on the one hand working on these reusable data services. So we really want to set them up in a way that other product teams can use them for data ingestion and the data provisioning in these analysis environments. And then thinking it should not only be real world data, right? It can be any kind of other semi-structured data. That's one idea. And also we want to expand the real-world data sources that we have currently. So we are mainly ingesting electronic health records and claims, and we also want to go into wearable medical device data and then look what kind of services we could build around these data sets.
Yeah, I think that was interesting. You talked about how many sources of data you have, and not all of them, the original source and that type of stuff. So but it's interesting if you can get more types of data to be able to bring that in and just know that there's high data quality. The amount of information you can derive from that is limitless, it seems like. Well, very good. Well, we really appreciate you here. Let me see if there are any questions for Alexandra in the chat. Please ask them. She's here and happy to answer questions for folks. Let's take a look. No pressing questions right now. If you think of questions after the fact, please let us know. We're happy to get those answered for you. But thank you so much, Alexandra, for your talk today. Very, very great information.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Let's see. And up next, we have a talk. We're a little bit ahead of schedule here, but we'll go ahead and get this talk going. We have a talk with Amber Hilton and Tin Ha of Google Cloud. They will be talking about, as we were just saying, implementing federated computational governance with metadata-driven automation. Metadata management is a central component for data governance in life sciences. For example, when implementing FAIR principles using open standards such as GFF3. In their talk, they're going to talk about how metadata-driven automation will allow organizations to scale and embed metadata management into daily developer workflows. And then they'll outline an events-driven architecture for metadata-driven automation. A lot of M's there. All right, we will go ahead and get their talk started now. And the folks are online too, so if you have questions throughout, just let them know.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us today. This is such an interesting area for discussion and we're really excited to be a part of it. Since the focus for today is life sciences, we wanted to bring to you some of our work done whilst looking into FAIR data principles and how to achieve some of these by implementing federated computational governance, specifically with metadata-driven automation. My name is Amber, and along with Tin, we work for Google Cloud. We're in the really privileged position to support our customers with a variety of technical challenges and work on opportunities to help them unlock more value from their data. First, I'm going to cover some of the background on FAIR research data and where we see the biggest opportunity for implementing these principles. And then Tin will take over for the second half and demonstrate how we think about implementing FAIR in an automated way. As part of my role at Google Cloud, I work specifically with a range of healthcare and life sciences organizations, building their technical strategies, scaling their computational platforms, and maturing their data practices together. Because of this, I've naturally had a focus on FAIR data principles and how we can help our customers deliver FAIR data. As well as this, last year, I had the opportunity to work with Tin, who was building out our solutions and best practices for data mesh. Together, we quickly identified the synergies between data mesh principles, which were not necessarily industry specific, and the FAIR data principles. And we started to explore how organizations could achieve FAIR data by implementing various data mesh principles. And so today, I want to share with you some of our thinking. To set the scene and the full scope for this presentation, I want to define what we consider to be research data. Many of you here, your focus is likely to be drug discovery or clinical, but the ideas we're going to be sharing can easily apply to a large range of disciplines. For example, agriculture, oceanology, and climate science. Research data can also be any information that has been collected, observed, generated, or created to validate original research findings. It is typically digital, but research data in this sense can also include non-digital formats such as laboratory notebooks or diaries. But also it's worth pointing out, we really recognize that maximizing value from research data is really not a trivial pursuit. And it's an area that presents opportunity as well as huge challenges. The variability of research data sources, it's their collection methods, the storage methods, lifecycle management and standards, makes management of research data really difficult to do well. Most organizations have developed research data management strategies, and these are put in place to address some of the challenges I just mentioned. It's typically undefined and left to best practices, but it is likely to follow a life cycle like something we see here. So that's from planning, collecting, processing, publishing, preserving, and reusing it. And the motivation for implementing these types of processes is that we all know good research data management allows us to extend the impact of our research, both internally and externally for the greater good. However, even with these best practices around research data management in place, the existing digital ecosystem surrounding this data management is limiting us from extracting the maximum benefit from our research investments. And it's been calculated to cost 10.2 billion in the EU alone. This cost is largely indicative of potential operational efficiency gain, that is from reuse of data, reducing deduplication or duplication of storage, etc. But what's astonishing is it doesn't actually include the new opportunities that can come from good data research management practices. And with this, what I'm referring to is the AI opportunity. I mentioned before that research data doesn't necessarily need to be digital, and as much as that remains true, AI presents a significant reason for why research data should be in a digital format. Biological systems are hugely complex, multidimensional, replete with interconnected and often independent or incomplete pathways, and often it's something that can't be modeled with mathematics alone. We all know that large pattern analysis are needed to solve many of these problems, and we also know that AI is a great tool for this. Solving complex problems with AI is dependent on huge amounts of data. Luckily, we know that research data is doubling every 2 years. It's dependent on AI development, so new models, and we're seeing this massively with the introduction of Gen AI coming out at the moment, and also scalable compute and storage infrastructure to run the computations, specifically in a cost-effective way. But luckily, we have all of these 3 core tenets to apply to AI, and so we can technically solve some of the world's most complex and unanswered questions. What's stopping us? We have a few things that are slowing us down, which brings me back to the question of research data management practices. What we know is that the large range of domain-specific tools required to collect and produce research data naturally results in siloed data, systems with little standardization, limited interoperability, and immense scale, which leads to hugely complex data acquisition and storage ecosystems. We know that 2/3 of research professionals cite data quality as the major barrier to using AI. Access to data repositories is not straightforward, it takes far too long to get approval. And data machine readability or lack of the data machine readability means that 80% of research data scientists' time is spent wrangling data rather than doing the analysis or feeding into AI models. To summarize this, what I mean is to fully capitalize on the opportunity presented by AI, we need data of high quality. It needs to be well described, well structured, properly stored, accessible by machines, and compliant and secure. Which leads me on to FAIR. I'm sure many of you have heard about FAIR and are probably implementing it in many different ways. But just in case, the FAIR principles were developed by a consortium of scientists and organizations in 2016 with the intention to improve the management and sharing of research data. FAIR research data are data that are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The idea is that following the FAIR principles can help make research data more impactful by making it easier for people and machines to find, access, and use research data. The FAIR principles can help accelerate scientific discovery and innovation if adopted correctly. By adopting the FAIR principles, it allows organizations to address both the cost efficiency that I mentioned earlier, but also access the opportunity presented by AI. Each letter in FAIR refers to the 4 foundational principles that aim at findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability, with a further 15 guiding principles that more explicitly and measurably describe how fairness of data can be achieved through technical implementation. The FAIR principles were drafted by a group of researchers, funders, publishers, and universities to increase the reuse of scientific data, that be it by humans or machines. How you apply the FAIR principles really depends on your specific discipline and your way of doing research, but there are different activities you should consider within your research workflows if you want to make your data fair. For instance, documenting your data, adding meaningful metadata, choosing appropriate file formats, giving access to the data, and adding a persistent identifier, and finally licensing the data. And these activities laid out here are often referred to as the FAIRification practices. The documentation element of this is about describing the data to anyone looking to use it and to be able to come back to your own data at any point in time and understand the totality of it. Also, it can be used to highlight any legal, ethical, or contractual considerations to the data. And most importantly, it should be in a human readable format. The metadata, this is all about the data about the data. So we know who did the experiment, when, under what conditions, what different variations of machines are they using, etc. This makes the data reusable or repeatable when needing to try and reproduce the data. The data formats component of this is that we should be encouraging open standards with compatible libraries and pipelines increasing interoperability of data, collaboration potential, what we see is that a lack of common data formats really slows down the research cycles. Access to data is about defining who has access to the data, how they should have access to the data. It should be dependent on those legal, ethical, and contractual considerations laid out in the documentation. And by providing open access to the data descriptions or the metadata specifically, aids collaboration by knowing what data is out there. So by seeing what is the full set of the data, and it's allowing people to apply for access when they have a legitimate use for the data. The persistent identifiers component of this is providing a long-lasting link to your data set. And then the data licenses is, for example, using something like the Creative Commons to describe how you want your data to be used and its attribution requirements. So we recognize that FAIR principles has the potential to, of course, transform research principles, but it also looked like it could be a lot of extra overhead on the scientists. So how can we make doing the right thing as easy as possible? The take on FAIR is that it should enable scientists to do more and better research and not create extra work for them. So drawing parallels to our data mesh architectures and operational tools, we saw there's a potential for many of the FAIR principles and components from the previous slides to be automated, accelerating an organization's journey to implementing FAIR data practices. So this is a great time for me to pass over to Tin, who's mapped out an example of a FAIR implementation on Google Cloud. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tin. I'm a data engineer in Google Cloud Professional Services. In my section, I will describe a solution for federated computational governance to enforce FAIR principles in the life sciences. The solution is based on work we delivered for a customer, but anonymized to remove all proprietary information. First, I will describe the use case for the scenario. In this scenario, lab instruments are generating images and stored in a local file share. Using a centrally provided ingestion framework, the scientists can ingest the images data from the on-prem file share into a staging storage bucket on the cloud. Once the data is in the staging storage bucket, using the same ingestion framework, the scientists can populate metadata for the images in the staging storage bucket that they wish to publish as a data product. The metadata may include information such as the data format, data ownership, data classification, but also custom metadata such as experiment name and parameters. Once the scientist submits the form, the ingestion framework automatically validates the image data format and the associated metadata to ensure compliance to the FAIR principle. Once everything is verified, the ingestion framework moves the data into the data product storage bucket, which is FAIR compliant, and attaching all metadata submitted by the scientist to the newly ingested image objects. The ingestion framework generates comprehensive audit logs and creates data lineage traces in the data catalog. Data product buckets and objects are given persistent unique identifiers and linked to relevant metadata, such as data licenses. Consumers can easily search and browse available data products in their metadata in the data catalog. Each data product receives a persistent identifier in the data catalog. They can also review the license terms associated with the data product and request access from the same portal. Finally, research data and metadata are accessible and computer readable for both human users as well as data processing pipelines and machine learning. There are a few user personas in the solution. First, we have the data product team on the left, whose responsibility is to publish and maintain data products, as well as the data product metadata. Second, we have the data consumers on the right, who are interested in discovering available data products and consuming them for machine learning purposes. Third, we have a group of data stewards and data governance teams who are responsible for standardizing the metadata schema, the processes for managing the life cycle of both the data products and the metadata associated with it, as well as how metadata can drive governance policies at both the points of data ingestion into the platform, as well as data consumption. Finally, we have the data platform team, whose responsibility is to provide automated processes and self-service workflows to help data users achieve their goals on the platform. To ensure all data on the platform are compliant to the FAIR principles, the platform enforces a number of policies to onboard data products onto the platform. For example, data is ingested into a staging storage location and only moved to the published storage location once sufficient metadata has been provided. Relevant metadata may include file format, documentation, data domain, owners of the data products, security and privacy classifications, as well as relevant data licenses that must be respected when ingested and consuming this data product from the platform. The ingestion framework also verifies that the data conforms to standard data formats, such as TIFF for images or GFF3 for RNA sequencing. For certain data formats, such as TIFF or GFF3, the ingestion framework also extracts relevant metadata from the file format itself and indexes them into a control table, linking the metadata to the object persistent identifier. By providing automated guardrails to ensure data products on the platform conforms to common data format and metadata standards, we can satisfy two principles of FAIR: interoperable and reusable. Using available metadata on the products, such as data classification, data domain, we can also create automated attributes-based access control IAM policies, or ABAC IAM policies, to govern access to these data products. We can also enforce role-based access control on the metadata index table, such that users would only be able to browse metadata for objects that they are entitled to access before they can request access to the data objects itself. All metadata are stored either in a central data catalog or in a central metadata index, ensuring data discoverability and auditability of all metadata changes. These policies ensure the platform satisfies the two other FAIR principles: findable and accessible. Let's take a look at how we automated the metadata standardization procedures in this scenario. First, we work with the data stewards and data governance team to define a standardized metadata taxonomy and schema. This is an illustration of the metadata schema, not what was actually used by the customer. The schema covers information such as storage system, format, the JSON schema of the data is structured, the data product version, the data product status, which is an enum that can have values of draft, review, publish, obsolete, etc. We expect the data products owners to provide the metadata for all of these fields, except for a few fields which are restricted to only centralized processes, which can change. For example, this can be a data product certification status, which can take the value gold, silver, bronze, and automatically assign based on the completeness of the data product metadata, as well as other factors, such as whether the data product is considered an authoritative source, etc. On the left, we have the data product team who are responsible for both uploading data as well as submitting the data product metadata using the standardized schema defined by the data governance team. Finally, the data platform team builds automation workflows that automatically triggers on any changes to the data product metadata to verify the content of the metadata template against the schema and performs other checks before adding the certification status to the data product metadata. The metadata is automatically indexed in the data catalog, so both the data product teams can check the verification status of the data products, and consumers can browse available data products metadata with confidence that this metadata is governed and trustworthy. In this case study, we use an events-driven architecture involving Cloud PubSub for messaging and Cloud Function for the automated verification checks, or the clouds have similar cloud services. Using events-driven architecture, we have loose coupling between the events producer and the events consumer, such that the same workflow can react to different upstream events, and different workflows can be developed in parallel by different team members in the team. This also simplifies real-time auditing and alerting for all metadata changes. In this scenario, the architecture is driven by metadata events, such as data product status changing from draft to publish, triggering a workflow to validate and ensure that the published data product conforms to common standards. The architecture is flexible, such that it can accommodate other use cases, such as access requests, triggering changes in IAM permissions, automatically triggering data quality scans, etc. In the case study, we had to deal with a number of complexity in managing distributed systems. For example, ensuring idempotency with at least one message delivery, instrumentation and observability for the distributed application, etc. Other challenges for the solution involves the people and process side of technological change. For example, how to define the metadata taxonomy, how to get people to adopt the new processes. At Google, we've recently published the Data Card Playbook, providing comprehensive best practices for driving data documentation initiative in the organization, covering both an example metadata template, cloud-agnostic technical enablers, as well as workshop plans to engage with stakeholders to drive completion of data documentation. So what are data cards? In short, data cards summarize critical information about data sets that help people make informed decisions about how data is used in machine learning systems for product, policy, and research. They are important in driving awareness of transparency and ethical consideration when curating and consuming data for research purposes. This is increasingly important today as machine learning models are becoming so sophisticated that the majority of enhancement in results are coming from curating better data sets rather than curating better model architectures. You can see an example data card on the right for a data set that we publish. As you can see, the data card covers information such as how the dataset was collected and curated, any filtering criteria that was applied, how it was labeled and validated. Data cards make explicit and tacit information about datasets readily accessible, understandable, and actionable, so that when data is used in models and products, it's well-informed and thoughtful. Data cards also provide details which might be hard to glean from the data card directly. Data cards provide a very important building block for transparent and ethical consideration of datasets when used in machine learning. The data card can communicate intended and unintended use cases for a dataset and signal possible caveats of using the dataset. In short, data card help the users make informed decisions on using the dataset. I highly recommend checking out the Data Card Playbook, which is completely open source and technology agnostic. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Excellent. And we have Tin here to answer any questions that folks have. Let's bring him on now. The wonders of the internet, connecting to audio. He'll be on in just a moment. Hey, Tin, how are you? I think it said maybe, oh, there you go. I was going to say, it said your audio wasn't quite there. Are we here now?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. That was really interesting information and how it connected to the last talk with Alexandra talking about the federated computational governance. I was curious, how might federated computational governance approach help with the case studies we heard today? Did you hear any places where you thought this might be a great approach for some of the folks who presented?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that I didn't mention is the case study was designed in a data mesh environment where we were working with the central platform team to build a self-service research environment for distributed scientists across the organization to use in order to accelerate research, in this case specifically for drug development. And a key requirement for the platform is computational governance. So governance, the customer wanted to move away from manual and ad hoc paper-based process to computational policies being validated continuously as data is being ingested into the platform. Some of the principles of the customer was that all data on the platform must conform to certain minimum standards. For example, respecting data licenses of the source systems. So yeah, I think it was designed for federated computational governance. Sorry, I took a bit of a long answer, but and the interesting thing that I would say is the approach that we presented can be adopted outside of data mesh. So if you had a centralized data warehouse or data lake, you can still use the same approach. And at some point, when you're ready to federate ownership, it will also work in a data mesh setting.
Yeah, are there typical hurdles and challenges that people should be aware of as they get started, or will it be specific to their environments and what they're doing?
I think the biggest hurdle is translating the policies into something that can be automated. Sometimes I mean, this is a challenge that is still being figured out today by the customer. How do you translate, I guess, legal terms into something that can be computationally verified is a complex process. So the technical part of being given some metadata and checking whether it matches a certain kind of business logic, that's the easy part. I would say the most difficult part of the computational governance policy is having a really good collaboration across the governance team, the technology team, but also the legal team to get everybody aligned and get to a point where we can start iterating on the computational policies as quickly as possible. It's very difficult to get to a point where we have something that can get signed off, so to speak, to implement some of the more challenging scenarios. So it's probably best to start, with many of the talks that's been presented before. I've called out with simpler, easier, smaller examples, and then gain trust in with the legal team, with the security team, that everything is working as they expect before we start adopting more complicated or complex scenarios.
Are there other good public examples or case studies you've seen where people have been able to do that successfully?
Nothing comes to the top of my head.
It's challenging.
I mean,
not everybody could talk about it publicly, or so I'm just curious if you'd seen anything.
Not that I can think of.
We'll have to build some of those case studies, it sounds like.
Yeah. I'm sure they exist. Yeah, but I guess I don't know them, or they haven't been talking about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, we should definitely be publishing more information.
Well, what are some immediate and long-term benefits that people see from taking this approach? I think that some of them are pretty obvious, but do they see some short-term benefits right away that make them realize, oh yeah, this is a good process and a good workflow for us, and then maybe some long-term benefits that they see after doing this for a period of time?
That's a good question. I think the long-term benefit is allowing multiple teams to work in parallel on the platform, but still maintaining trust. So the challenge in every enterprise that I work with is how do you balance democratization of data with data protection and privacy and security. There's a balance that is very challenging to meet, and I think with the adoption of new cloud technology where everything is becoming more available, you have all of the data that you can query at your fingertips, and you can generate, I think Amber talked about how much data is being generated in scientific research. It's becoming more and more difficult to find this balance, so to speak, between data democratization and data security and privacy. So I think the key to enabling this in the future is via automation. So we have to move away from, I guess, manual access approval workflows, manual data ingestion processes, and whenever there is an opportunity to automate and standardize, that we should do so. And I think that would reduce the friction for everyone to be able to ingest data and use data without lengthy manual processes as much as possible. So yes, I think it will have long-term, many long-term benefits. But I guess in the short term, it is a big hurdle to implement all these things, as I kind of alluded to. And there's nothing wrong with standardizing your processes, doing it manually, figuring out something that works, and then at some point, figuring out where are the opportunities for automation and incrementally adding them into the platform, rather than starting off thinking that you need all of the policies automated, because then there's a question of value delivery as well. We need to continuously solve business challenges. We can't let all of these technological hurdles kind of block us. So yeah, I think hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to consider, right? And it kind of reminds me of that slide that Amara had in her talk that showed, I think it was Gartner's spectrum about, centralization, decentralization, federated, some of them. And it kind of, captures, well, these are the trade-offs that you might be making if you go one route or another. And it's similar thing, right? You might see some benefits, but what else might you not be able to achieve if you go the other route, or kind of prioritize centralization over decentralization or whatever. So no, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's an early practice. We're learning how to do this, and yeah, we should find some more case studies to see if we can show examples so people have a sense of what this looks like for them. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat, and otherwise I think we'll be going over to our breakout session. If you all have questions for our presenters, if you think of them later, if you're watching this later, please let us know on the Data Mesh Learning Slack. We're happy to make sure that your questions are answered. And right now we will go over to the breakout session. So in a moment, we're going to stop the live stream. But before we do that, we want to let you know about the breakout session. It's a chance for you to meet other people who are participating in this event. We're going to be putting you in small group breakouts so you can get to know people. We'll send the Zoom link in a moment, and we will have no data mesh staff will be on every single breakout. So if you have challenges with technical stuff, just let us know in the chat. We'll still be able to access it there. And we'll have the Zoom link shared, and we'll break you into small groups. Introduce yourself, share where you are in your data mesh journey, share about the key learning that you had today or key takeaways from this event, and I hope you can meet some new people to help you along your journey. Thank you to all of our presenters. Thanks to everyone who is joining live, and we will see you all in the breakout in a moment.